Hello, everybody. How are we today? Are we good? All right, perfect. Okay, welcome. My name is Sarah Colley. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator here at the Great Falls Public Library, and we are here to do some cowboy cooking on the Charlie Cart, which is really exciting. The Great Falls Public Library is here to connect people with resources and knowledge, and we are excited that this is part of that grand old mission. Because you don't always get opportunities like this in every location, right? Especially being so close with the Charlie Russell Museum. This came about when Austin here got hired on over at the Russell, and I said, "You like to do this kind of stuff? Perfect. I have a thing for you." Basically, that's how it happened. And he was on for like a week, and then we forgot about it for a while. But here we are. Yay! It finally is happening. The Charlie Cart that you guys are seeing here, I know a few of you guys are familiar with it, but the Charlie Cart is sponsored by the Great Falls Public Library Foundation and then the Kuntz family. So thank you to both of our sponsors for making today's program possible. This is a really amazing and unique thing that we have here. We are the 4th location in Montana to have a Charlie Cart. The whole purpose of this is for nutrition education. The Charlie Cart program itself is geared more towards children, but as some of you know, I do adult programming, so here we are. It is my goal that eventually this Charlie Cart is used by local organizations to do education for our public, whether it's through like the food bank or the mission or anything like that. This is a community resource, which is a great opportunity for everybody. So, Austin here is the Education and Programming Director over at the Russell Museum. I have known him since I moved here, and I worked over at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, and he would come to my office all the time, and we'd just hang out. It was great. Austin is a huge history buff, which is why he's the one leading today's conversation. So welcome to Cooking with Charlie, welcome to the library, and I'm going to turn it over to Austin.
Alrighty, everybody. Well, first off, I make no pretensions that the meal today is going to be heart healthy. You're going to get a very wonderfully high dose of your nitrates and salts. But this is not health food. This is meant to be fuel for working cowboys. And in the spirit of a good chuck wagon cook, there is zero time to waste. So I'm going to get this pot heating up, and we'll get our bacon going. Just before most of you got here, I did dice up our bacon. Bacon is the main ingredient that we're going to start with. The next one is beans. And then the third essential ingredient in cowboy cooking, time. So, it's going to be a lot of hurry up and wait. Any veterans here? Anybody? You might know the meaning of that phrase. So, a little background on cooking and why I love doing historic cooking. It's no secret in my family, the Haneys love food. It's been that way for over a century. We all pride ourselves on being pretty darn good cooks. And one of the first things I got interested in when I got into history is the history of food and how we've prepared it. Of course, anyone who knows their Russell paintings will know this famous one here. It is a great example of cooking back in the 1880s alongside of Charlie Russell and all his cowboy buddies. Anybody know the name of this one? That doesn't work at the Russell Museum or volunteer there?
Something cookie or the chef.
Well, bronc to breakfast. There's an alternate version of this called the Camp Cook's Troubles. But this guy right here is probably, without a doubt, my favorite character in any Russell painting. He's actually the guy I modeled my hat on. So this cranky old cantankerous cook, probably swearing at that cowboy and brandishing his knife, I feel him on a spiritual level. So, I think that pot is getting good and warm now. So we are just going to dump that bacon in here. The cool thing about cowboy cooking is it is stupidly easy. this was meant to be fuel. This is not gourmet Gordon Ramsay kind of affairs. And just like any good cow camp cook, we're just gonna pretend that those darn old cowboys moved around my utensils. Which is a surefire way to get in trouble. You don't mess with the cook. Kind of goes the same today, right? So, believe it or not, we would not probably be making this in a cast iron pan. I have pretty much everything that's in that painting right now. I actually do this kind of historical cooking during historical reenactments and other random old-timey fun that I've done for half my life at this point. But very similar to this pot, you guys might notice, hanging off the fire here, it's a little bit taller, but that's what you're cooking your beans in. You might be baking some biscuits in the cast iron, the Dutch oven there. You might be frying up some stuff in the skillet, but that's going to be your bean pot. And of course, the most essential piece of any cow camp cook's arsenal, the coffee pot. My cook setup, we have 2 coffee pots, because I hang out with a lot of guys who like their coffee. We would have done well back in the 19th century, I think. So, the basics of this recipe, we're kind of doing an 1885 style cowboy beans and bacon. Now, you could have used pork belly, which is basically uncured, unsmoked, uncut from what the bacon comes from. But if you're going to go out, you don't want to go and buy pork belly from Central Avenue Meats. Number one, you're crazy, go and do it. But you can just use bacon. It's pretty similar. And again, we are pork cowboys. We are not picky. So the beauty of this recipe is we're kind of going to go for a basic beans and bacon. But if you have more time, you can turn this into a baked bean. You can turn this into a bean soup. You can turn this into chili. The base recipe that we've got today, if you switch out a couple things, you can make almost anything. And that's really the beauty of this kind of cooking. So it's hard to see, but the bacon is kind of rendering in the pan. We're getting that grease out. We don't want to be too fast now, or else, we're not going to get pristine chunks of little bacon in there. And there's no right or wrong way to cook bacon. Whether you like it a little crispy or with just a touch more squeal on it, it's all up to you. So I personally like a little bit more squeal on my bacon, but that's just a little seasoning in my book.
Awesome.
Yes?
I noticed they didn't have any, you don't have any sugar in the recipe. Did they start introducing sugar? Is that, do you know anything about
That might depend on your cook, but I don't put sugar in my beans. I'm not a sweet bean man. So some people are a little different. I know members of my family, one little trick we like to do is maple syrup or maple sugar. That works really well if you're going for more of a baked bean kind of vibe. While that's cooking down, I'm going to get our onion kind of chopped and ready to go. Onions, root vegetables, probably the most common that you're going to find in a cow camp. Contrary to popular belief, out in rural Montana, even in the 1860s, we're not a desolate frontier, like the movie-wise. My favorite example of that is Helena had a combination ice cream parlor, soda shop, and a bowling alley in 1865. So if they could have that, you can have some onions. Gardens were very popular, both with ranch houses and with small-time farmers in their little communities. A good way of making extra money on the side would be selling vegetables or milk or eggs or anything like that in little towns. So we have access to vegetables, contrary to popular belief. One of the other things that we'll kind of cover when we get there, and as far as onions go, you can dice them as big or as little as you want them. I'm going to get them, we'll see. I'm not used to this knife. There we go. We're just going to do a rough chop. I'm not exactly a persnickety cow-camp cook. Food is food. There we go. Simple as that. So speaking of other vegetables and things, one of the things about this recipe is you might notice that onion's the only fresh thing on the board. Cans. Cans are a big deal for people on the move who are going to be out and away from, that little farmhouse that has the fresh vegetables for too long. So canned goods, they go all the way back to the beginning of the 19th century. This was a revolution. So the can that I've got here is what they actually would have looked like back in the day. You might notice that little knob on top. That is a hole in there with a little cap that's sealed with lead solder.
Oh, good.
You get your vitamins and minerals in the 19th century, that's for darn sure. So feel free to pass that around. Check out ye old-timey can. That's a real one, by the way. Not old, but it's a reproduction. So
You're actually soup in it?
there's something in there. The guy that makes those is a good friend of mine, and he makes a joke version of it, and the label on the soup says, "Oops, all lead." So, we like our humor.
Do you know when they started tinning foods in your, when it first became available?
What's that?
When did canned
Oh,
goods?
canned foods? That started coming into play right around 1810. So the Napoleonic Wars are the earliest cans that come out. They're not very good. It took some time to actually develop into something usable. But we've been doing cans for about 210 years. So, kind of cool.
And home canning, do you know when that?
What's that?
Home canning?
Home canning, so the process was invented around then, and it took a little while to take off, but I don't have a definitive date for you, but it is 19th century. So by the time of Charlie Russell in the 1880s, yes, people would have been starting the home can or already on their way. So there are other methods of preservation. Dried meats were very big. You might notice we're working for a cow outfit, but we're not eating beef. Why?
It's all too valuable.
It's too valuable. That's the money right there. You can't be eating what you're trying to make money off of. So salted pork, pork belly, things like that, those would have been a lot of the main meats. Once we've got the beans rolling, I'll do a little bit more in-depth history of this stuff. But I think we're just about ready to add our onions. The beauty of a one-pot meal, you don't really got to worry too much about cleanup. Good mix. This is the hard part, the waiting.
That sounds good.
I'm glad, yeah. Onions, bacon, you really can't go wrong. So we've got a couple different kinds of beans here. We're going to add a can of tomatoes. Canned tomatoes were one of the great luxuries of the 1870s and 80s. They're talking about guys going out, going crazy to get their hands on a can of this. Depending on the unscrupulous salesman, You could go anywhere for almost $1 a can. Canned peaches were also really big as well. So you can actually eat pretty decent out there. So this is not cowboy related, but just a couple days ago was the 150th anniversary of Little Bighorn. And the way those soldiers in the field were cooking is very similar to how the cowboys were cooking, and just people in general at the time. There's this wonderful account a couple weeks before the battle of a farmer from Bozeman going over the divide, well not the divide, but over Bozeman Pass, down to the Yellowstone River near Livingston, building a boat and hauling a bunch of canned goods and vegetables down to the soldiers near modern Terry. So, case in point, you can get these. So, what do you think we're going to do with all that bacon grease that's in here? Oh, we're keeping it in there. Like I said, this does not pretend to be heart healthy, but my God, is it going to taste good. You got to think, they're burning an ungodly amount of calories out there. A good portion of them just to keep warm. Because again, most of these cowboys are not stocky gentlemen like myself. They're beanpole skinny, just little teenage, early 20-something guys out in the middle of nowhere, Montana. It's a little cold out there. It's a little windy, so you gotta keep their strength up. You gotta keep them healthy, fit, fed while they're working on the trail. So I guess I can go a little bit into my slideshow because it's taking some time. But we got nothing but time. So let's be real, folks. The life of a cowboy, for as romanticized as it is, oftentimes sucked. Long hours, harsh and sometimes dangerous conditions. Kind of like I said, these guys are mostly late teens, early 20s. They're out in the middle of nowhere. And food is more often just fuel than anything else. As for the kind of way things worked, this is a pretty typical cow camp setup. In the days of the open range, you would have had a group of about 10 to 20 with their own remuda of horses, their own little set of camp tents, and a chuck wagon. And this is really home on the range. Eh? Get it? Oh yeah, there we go. So, who were the cooks? Describe to me in your mind's vision the typical ranch cook or old cowboy cook, kind of, right? What do you think that fella's like?
Grouchy.
What's that?
Grouchy.
Yeah, grouchy. That's accurate.
Probably a retired cowboy who.
Retired cowboy, yeah.
Probably disabled.
Older than the cowboys.
Older than the cowboys, but how old compared to the cowboys?
Not too much.
So, believe it or not, the stereotype of the cantankerous old ranch cook, they got the cantankerous part right. They are indeed older than the cowboys, but not by much. The average cook for a cattle outfit is in their late 20s or 30s. So I'm actually perfect candidate for working as an old cow camp cook. You did get some of those older fellas, particularly once they go into more of a sedentary home-based ranch house kind of environment, the cooks do skew a little bit older. But out on the range, typically these guys, yeah, they're former cowboys, but they're aging out at 26, 27 and becoming cooks. Because of that, they've got a lot of knowledge, and they're really valuable to the cowboys themselves, but they're not exactly, old Gabby Hayes and Blazing Saddles, right, or Walter Brennan or anybody like that. So I'm going to do you guys a favor normally we would just use water. I want to give you guys a little extra flavor. So you can say I'm doing you a flavor, right? We're gonna put a little beef stock in this just to, not totally wow your taste buds with the wondrous flavors of the 19th century or lack thereof. Get some of them lovely little golden brown bits off the bottom of the pan here. I like to think that between the stories, the bad jokes, and puns, the Cowboys would have liked me.
At your right age.
Exactly. This is looking actually really good. Like, I knew it would be, but at the same time, it's always pleasantly surprising. So we're gonna do the can of tomatoes. Then we're gonna start adding our beans. Then after that, we just wait.
Do they use canned beans or do they use the?
So,
beans that you have to boil?
Canned beans were starting to come out, but normally we would soak these overnight. You're getting them dry and in bulk. I do not want to make you guys wait that long for your beans, but that would have been something that the cook would have started getting ready the night before. And there we go. Whole 9 yards. Bean juice and all. Again, you guys are gonna taste the flavors of the Cowboys. It's just bean water and
How much do you think a food wagon like that could hold? Like, how long could you be gone?
oh my goodness.
10 or 20 men.
Oh, goodness. That is a very good question.
And I realize that if you're taking beans in bulk and coffee in bulk.
Yeah, everything's in
flour
bulk.
and-
Yeah, so
But still.
you can last a long time if you prepare it right, but we're talking a couple weeks.
That seemed like a long time.
Yeah. That would seem like a long time, yeah.
Do they keep the sourdough starter in the middle of their flour bag?
So I'm gonna be completely honest, everything that I've seen, I do not think that these guys were that invested in it. Maybe some of them cared enough to do that, but the ones that I've read, that's too much hassle and work for what you're trying to do here.
So did the cook have to do anything else or just cook?
So, the life of a cook. Let me get one more can of beans in here, and then we'll keep rolling.
Do they make their biscuits with baking soda here?
Yes, there was baking soda, baking powder as well. One of the photos I have is from the 1890s, and you can see a little tin of baking powder in the side of the photo, which is pretty fun.
When I lived in Alaska, I read that baking powder had some bad connotations among men.
All right.
Some lady of the night was not getting enough customers, so she laughed and yelled to the man, "Well, goodbye, you baking powder eating SOBs."
So, speaking of spices and things and other whatnot, this is my little cook special seasoning blend. It's literally just salt, pepper, and a little bit of chili powder. Because guess what? They had chili powder back then. It started coming out in the early 1890s, and this stuff took off like lightning. Already by 1894, you have chili parlors and tamale carts showing up on the streets of places like Missoula, Helena, Butte. I haven't found one in Great Falls yet, but I guarantee you I probably will. So,
Ask Ken Robinson.
true. True. If anyone would know, it would be Ken.
What's a chili parlor?
What's that?
What's a chili parlor?
So a chili parlor is literally a place that serves a chili.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. They had literal restaurants, parlors, that were serving chili. If you guys really want to watch a great food history channel, look up Tasting History by Max Miller on YouTube. He does an entire episode on the chili queens of San Antonio who kind of kicked this off. Basically, Mexican-American women in San Antonio exercising the entrepreneurial spirit and selling bowls of chili and hot tamales from carts on the side of the streets down in San Antonio. And people loved it. They had, how do I put this nicely? The flavor palette of the average Euro-American in the 19th century was not exactly the most broad. As I lovingly say about my own mom, ketchup counts as a spice for a lot of folks. I'm glad she's not here tonight, because she would be like, "You really? You had to out me like that?" But it is what it is. Having just recently come back from Canada, where ketchup is like Tabasco to those folks up there, I understand it painfully well. Side tangent, I ordered a buffalo chicken sandwich in Winnipeg. What do you think they gave me?
Ketchup.
Something with barbecue sauce on it. And a sweet barbecue sauce at that. I was like, what the heck is wrong with you people? So, Sarah, dirty dishes, things like that, where should I throw them?
Just throw them in the sink.
Thank you. Wow. This is the boring part of it, because now we just gotta wait for this thing to really kick up the heat. So I am gonna bring that to a simmer. I am going to rinse my hands, and then we're gonna continue this little roundup. So I know we got way off tangent, but the life of a cow camp cook is kind of interesting. So you are going to be waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're going to get breakfast ready. That involves getting the fires going, getting everything prepared, and starting to cook. Because you got to have that ready for when night herd comes on and your day herd is going out. So Charlie Russell did a lot of night herd. So he was up all throughout the wee hours of the morning, would have come in about 6 o'clock in the morning. So that's when your day guys are going to go out. But basically, you're doing it for a shift change. Once everyone on both shifts have had their fill, they're all out, everyone's getting moving, ready to go. You're gonna pack up the wagon and you're gonna head on down to the next camp, anywhere from 10 to 15 miles further down the trail, depending on conditions. So once there, you're gonna set up the wagon again, kind of in that same setup we saw there. Some of the guys are gonna help you with setting up the camp. But basically, you're gonna get dinner ready. It's 2 meals a day, breakfast and dinner or supper, as they were calling it at the time. Because dinner technically is lunch. Don't you just love the 19th century? But there is no dinner. There's no lunch. So if you're a cowboy and you're hungry around noon, you are on your own. You have to provide it yourself. So once you're done with that, you do the dishes for the night, settle down in, rinse, repeat the next day. Who wants to be a cow camp cook? Anybody? Brave volunteer, Lisa, I appreciate it. So, it is much more than just an arduous job. It's much more than just the food and a place to stay and a place to sleep. The chuck wagon was the social center of the range. And this is one of my top 5 favorite Russell paintings Anyone know the name of this one?
Love kills lonesome.
Laugh Kills Lonesome. And I love this one because it's one of the last paintings that Charlie does. He's only got about a year or so to live when he's doing this one. And I think it's a great example of just what he's thinking about, just what he's going back to, what he's reminiscing on towards the end of his life. And it's socializing around that campfire by a chuck wagon. I truly believe that that man wanted nothing more than to be back there one more time. So for me, this is just one of my favorites. So, speaking of Charlie and a couple other fun things, we have some wonderful sources on life in the cow camps and the food in particular. And that is from this guy right here. Good friend of Charlie's, and this is him back in the cowboy days, back 1880s. This is Teddy Blue Abbott. Anybody ever heard of Teddy Blue? There we go. So Teddy Blue was born in England, came out, and his family was farming in Nebraska, and he got interested in becoming a cowboy by watching the Texas cowboys coming up on the trail drives. So he signs on with a cattle outfit and ends up going all the way up to Miles City. And he's in southeast Montana, right when the cattle industry is really booming here in the state. Territory at the time, but you know what I mean. So Teddy Blue eventually is going to sign on with the DHS. And if you look real closely, there's Charlie by this wagon. And who does this wagon belong to? The DHS. That was a great ranch to work for. It was run by Granville Stewart, who, if you know your early Montana history, had come here in the 1850s, been involved with the gold rush, probably was a vigilante. But this guy did everything in Montana, and by the 1880s, he's a cattle rancher. Teddy Blue is actually going to end up marrying his daughter. So he did pretty darn well for himself as a cowboy. But the DHS is kind of fun because, number one, Russell said they had the best cowboys in Montana. They were dressed the best, they were the best riders, the best ropers, and they had the best food. And Teddy Blue talks about the food in particular, about some of the nonsense that they were getting up to with it. So very quickly, Teddy Blue had learned kind of the code of the chuck wagon, if you will. Be on the cook's good side, don't mess with him. So he ended up actually doing a lot of chores for the cook, like gathering wood, helping with dishes, and that was a great way to get on the good side of the cook, but also the bosses. Any cowboy that would be willing to help out extra beyond what their specified job was, those are the ones they keep on for long term. Judging by the fact he married the owner's daughter, I think he did pretty good for himself. So this guy here is definitely a little more towards the old side and the stereotypical ranch cook. But this is the 1890s. Everyone's getting a little long in the tooth by then. So this is that one I was mentioning. Here's some baking powder there. And yeah, he's making pie. So the DHS and Montana ranches in general were famous on the cattle ranges across the West for the quality of their food and living conditions. One of my favorite quotes comes from Teddy Blue, and I'm going to read it straight off the screen so I don't screw this up. It's that good. But Teddy Blue's description is as follows. I had never seen such wonderful grub as they had at the DHS. They had canned tomatoes all the time, canned peaches even. While dried apples and prunes were the best you ever got in most cow outfits, and many times you were lucky to get those. In Texas, you sure wouldn't have gotten any of those. Those Texas outfits really hated to give out the grub. We had a Texas fellow repping with us on a roundup. Nope, don't do that. Yep, we had a Texas fellow repping with us on that roundup, eating with our wagon. The first day he was there, we had hot cakes for breakfast, bread for dinner, and hot biscuits for supper. When he saw the cook handing out that plate of biscuits, his eyes opened wide, and he said, "Jesus Christ, do you men have white bread 3 times a day?" Teddy Blue would also say that many of those Texas cowboys stayed on in Montana purely for the food, even if it meant freezing to death. So one of my other really fun complaints comes from a Texas guy talking about losing all his men to the Montana cattle outfits. And he says, "In Texas, you fellows rode 2 or 3 horses, worked for $25 or $30 a month, and you ate whatever they had in the wagon. As soon as you get to Montana, you expect to ride 10 horses, make $40 a month, eat pie 3 times a day, and sleep with the boss." So they were living pretty good up here in Montana. I'm just going to go back to this. So, as we're boiling our little pot of beans here, it's starting to look real good. Just got to get some of that moisture out. It's a little bit more like chili right now. But as I am definitely not a chili queen of San Antonio, we're going to keep cooking this. So, some of the other foods you might have gotten at a ranch. I mentioned that doing chores and helping out beyond what your job technically entailed got you on the manager's good side. There was a good reason to get on the good side, because about half the time, most of the cowboys were laid off in the winter. You didn't need as many to ride and check on the herd, because everything's all sedentary, mostly bedded down. Just a couple guys will get the job done. So winter is both the best of times to be a cowboy and the worst. Because if you're one that the boss likes and is kept on for the winter, you're going to be having dinner in the ranch house, probably with the boss's daughters, roller skating around the cookhouse like they did at the DHS, enjoying chewing gum, and meals like son of a gun in a sack, plum duff. It's like a plum pudding. So life's pretty good if you're on the boss's good side. If you're one of those cowboys that unfortunately is laid off for the winter, like Charlie often was, he was never the best cowboy, but he wasn't the worst. He always got hired back in the spring. But the winter, a lot of these cowboys that got laid off for the season would do what they called batching. And they'd get together, they'd find a shack, either pool their money and rent one, or build one, or hole up in an abandoned one, and they would spend the winter batching with each other, kind of pooling their resources in common to get by. So some of my favorite stories about Charlie come from when he was batching with guys. One of the most funny ones is 1892 up in Chinook. He's batching with a group of 6 other cowboys, and everybody in town starts calling them the Hungry Seven, because they sure lived up to that name. And one of the funniest stories is Charlie and another guy stealing chickens to try and make ends meet. And Charlie's playing the watchman while his friend is trying to steal some chickens in this coop, and sure enough, out comes the farmer, and there's a hullabaloo, and Charlie goes running off into the darkness, tripping over himself, and it's very comical. But somehow they managed to get back, and there was a chicken dinner waiting for them. So evidently, Charlie's acrobatics may have saved his buddy in that chicken coop.
Where did they spend their winters?
So they would probably spend them close to wherever their home range was. So if you were working up on the Milk River, you would have been batching in a place like Malta or Chinook or Havre. Bear Paw Pool people, they were oftentimes Big Sandy or Havre. You had a lot of guys in the Muscle Shell hole up near what became Grass Range, but at the time was maybe Montana. You would have had guys near Lewistown or Utica, all these little places. Further down on the Yellowstone, Terry, Miles City, Billings. Those were all places that you would have found little pockets of cowboys batching in the winter. So Teddy Blue talks about one time when he was working for Granville in the DHS, he was sent up to kind of watch over their northern herds for the winter. So he had, a job over the winter, but he was kind of out on his own, and he ends up holding up with a fellow by the name of Pike Landusky, if you know that name. So there are some really fun characters that pop up in and around the cattle ranges at the time and in Teddy Blue's memoirs. So if you ever wanted to read something about this, read We Pointed Them North. So highly recommend it. So, wrong way. So going back to Charlie, one of the things he often did when he was batching with other cowboys is he played the cook. And mixed reviews on Charlie's chef skills. He was always a much better artist than a chef, but he loved to cook, and especially for his friends. So Charlie had some very strong opinions on how coffee should be made, not always to everyone's liking. I personally would have loved his coffee, because apparently, according to one friend, he liked it dark and thick. Quite a descriptor. But Charlie, throughout his life, after he kind of aged out of being an active cowboy, he kind of absorbed that tradition of once you're too old to be an actual cowboy, your job is to cook. So this is one of my favorite illustrations he did. This is up from the Buffalo Roundup on the Flathead. And the quote that Charlie's saying to this poor fellow balking at the food is, "Have some beef, Mr. Douglas." So, quite the character. But he loved doing this all the time. One of his favorite routines was making breakfast over the fire in his studio. He was particularly proud of his biscuits, and we do have some biscuits coming. Oh my God! It's a Count Kent miracle. I feel like that Texas cowboy. Eyes open wide like, man, this is great. We just got to keep this pot boiling for a little bit longer. But it's perfectly edible right now. We just need a bowl to do it.
I brought some because you said chili, so I brought
Oh, even better. So we're going to keep cooking this a little bit. I do want it a little bit thicker. But I do have an audience engagement activity. You guys are going to help me make something for this meal. This was one of my favorite things to do with kids at Fort Missoula where I used to work. It's called butter in a jar. Yeah, you're darn right. I'm going to make you make butter. And once I teach you this secret, you guys will be making fresh butter all the time, I guarantee it. It's also a great workout. So we got to burn off some of the calories of these beans and bacon, right? Yeah. So, in the spirit of Charlie and the gang all involved, I'm going to pass out some of these. Would you like to, folks like to participate? There we go. Perfect. Tell you what, it's actually good if we have two people and you can trade off. So we're going to do this. Very interestingly. Okay. All right. Big one down here. There. And I'll have you two do that. Okay. So, to make butter in a jar is stupidly simple. I just need to have a timer. So, for the next 4-ish minutes, you guys are gonna shake those jars like the dickens, okay? And once we're done with that round, we're gonna switch it off and we're gonna do it again. All right. Pretend like you got like a little maraca shaker, you know, little cow music. The little Latin-inspired version of Home on the Range, right? Bet you guys didn't know that you'd have to work for your dinner. And maybe by the time we're done with our butter, we'll have some beans ready for everybody. Man, this is the part where I get to relax. Question?
I was just going to tell you, we have a story when I had a great aunt come from Nebraska to Wyoming. And it was in the late 1800s, in the 90s. And she told how they made bread. And so they would mix it up at night, and then it would sit overnight, and then the next morning, they would, or all day, she would have it in a wagon, and then she would knead it down, and it would rise and knead it down, and the kids couldn't ride with her because she had the bread in the wagon. And then by the time they got to where they were staying, they would unload the stove, because they carried a real cook stove, and then she would make rolls and bread and bake it. Well, then, the bread, you know, they could use it, and all the rolls and everything. And it was just interesting how they went through that whole process and made bread and rolls for them while they're traveling.
That's awesome. Who's having fun? Heck yeah.
What are we shaking?
So you guys are shaking heavy cream.
Just heavy cream?
Just heavy cream. So basically, the agitation, it's kind of like when you're churning the butter, it's just on a smaller scale. But slowly but surely, you're going to be separating those solids from what's going to be buttermilk. And the best part is, everything that you're making is completely usable, in that you can use the buttermilk to make your biscuits that you put your butter on. And you can use the butter that you made to make your biscuits and put it on the biscuits and do all this stuff. It's amazing. It's simple. The kids just loved it. You guys might be a little less enthusiastic.
Would they have taken a milk cow with them?
So, no.
Okay.
That's a bad idea to have a milk cow out on the range with a bunch of beef cattle.
What? So they had to
Well,
do this before they left?
A nice single young lady cow out there, she could get in trouble. I'm talking about them rapscallion beef steers and things like that and all the nonsense they'll get
Steers
into.
for breakfast.
Yeah. Those would have been at ranch houses, milk cows. So, the open range period in Montana history is extremely short. The history of cattle ranching, you can go all the way back. There are some small-scale herds with the fur traders at places like Fort Union and Fort Benton. The Jesuits brought cattle with them into the Bitterroot Valley, but large-scale cattle operations don't really show up until the 1850s in the person of Johnny Grant. And this is important because Johnny Grant, he's Métis, he was running cows from Fort Hall up to the Beaverhead and the Deer Lodge valleys. And his mode of operation is he'd come down with a healthy cow, or a herd of healthy cows, and for one healthy animal, he'd take 2 sick ones off of the hands of people moving on the Oregon Trail. He'd move them back up to Montana, fatten them up over the winter and spring, bring them down to Fort Hall, and he would rinse and repeat this operation. And speaking of rinse and repeat, second person, it is your time to start shaking the butter. Awesome. switch over to another person. What's that? It's done? We'll keep shaking just in case. Oh, yeah, you're making some good butter over there. We got a pro. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's only gonna get better the more you shake it.
Would you explain that again about the sick cattle and the what?
Okay, so the sick cattle, it's basically what Johnny Grant was doing. He'd come down in the spring with his healthy herd, and he would trade them at Fort Hall. One healthy animal for two sick or worn out animals from people on the Oregon Trail. He'd bring those cattle back to Montana, they'd get healthy, fattened up over the winter and spring, and then he'd bring those animals down to Fort Hall and repeat the operation. So why this is important is Granville Stewart, that guy I mentioned in the 1880s, when he got to Montana in the 1850s, the first person he befriended was Johnny Grant. It's all connected. But Johnny Grant sells this operation to a guy named Conrad Coors in the 1860s. So the Grant Coors Ranch and Deer Lodge, it's those guys. Coors starts doing beef for the mining towns in western Montana. Nelson Story brings his herd up in 1866, and things really take off. The earliest cattle ranching in our area is on the Sun River Valley to feed Fort Shaw, Sun River, and Fort Benton in the 1870s. With the arrival of the railroad, you start getting the Texas cattle drives coming up this far in the early 1880s. And that's the golden age of the open range, is this 1881, 82-ish in the Miles City area, up through the Great Die-Off, 1886, 1887, because what's that real famous Charlie Russell piece of that starving cow in the snow? Yeah, waiting for a Chinook in the last of 5,000. That really kills off the open range period and begins kind of this modern ranch system that we see today. That is looking fairly beany. Great description, right? How are we doing on time? Oh, we got another 2.5 minutes. Keep shaking. Oh, goodness.
So,
Yeah.
she was able to do hers in 4 minutes. What technique? What am I doing wrong?
Well, the faster you shake it, the better it gets. But you should need to do it for about 8 minutes to get it a good, even consistency. At 4 minutes, it starts solidifying, but it's not fully ready yet. You gotta get every last little ounce of butter off of it. So.
So do they use top milk?
What's that?
Do they use top milk to make butter?
I don't necessarily know what top milk is, but
Back before milk was pasteurized, they came, when the milk they had it in horse wagon, I remember that in Illinois. The milk came in glass bottles that were pre-pasteurized to the top.
well, okay, so that's what they call top milk. This is literally the same thing. I've never heard the phrases, but yes, it would have been the cream.
I remember skimming off the top milk.
Yeah. So,
I think kids in Britain figured out how to fry their keep the top.
how we doing on our butter, everybody?
I thought the whole thing was gonna be solid. I didn't realize. Lisa,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is exactly what, yeah, look at that. I gotta do that too, so. And look at that, for 8 minutes of work, the freshest butter you will ever have in your life. And you get buttermilk from it. So the best part about this is if you wanted to add honey to it, you wanted to add salt to it, whatever you want to put in it, you can put in this butter. So, if we really wanted to finish it, we'd actually put it in ice water, and we would squeeze out the rest of the buttermilk from it. But we're not going to do that. We don't need to. But that's how you would finish it if you wanted to really finish it. So, we are just about ready for beans, people. So, at this time, if you got any questions, now's the time to ask old Cookie here.